Welcome to the Aging Well Firefighter, the podcast for first responders, our families, and the communities we serve. Whether you're on the front lines or standing with us, I'm here to help you fight wisely and age bravely. Long-awaited final episode in our series, Connection is Medicine. In the first two episodes, we explored loneliness as a real health hazard, as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to the U.S. Surgeon General, and we looked at how strong relationships serve as emotional turnout gear. Today, we're widening that lens to the community level, because connection doesn't stop at the firehouse door or the family dinner table. It's the fabric that builds neighborhoods and schools and aging networks. Today, I'm joined remotely by Janet Zander, Advocacy and Public Policy Coordinator at the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources and founding member of the Wisconsin Coalition for Social Connection. She spent decades helping older adults and people with disabilities find purpose and belonging. And before that, she spent 16 years answering ambulance calls as a volunteer EMS responder. Also joining me is Meghan Christian, licensed clinical social worker with the Institute for Child and Family Well-Being, where she focuses on trauma, neurodevelopment, and resilience. Her work translates brain science into real-world healing for children and families. Together, during this conversation, we cover the full lifespan from children learning trust to older adults rebuilding circles of support. And we talk about how connection is being redesigned as a form of public health infrastructure. We'll unpack the World Health Organization's 2025 report that calls loneliness a global public health crisis. And we'll ask what that means for firefighters and families and communities right here at home. So, grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's talk about how every handshake, every shared meal, and every thinking of you text becomes the medicine our culture needs most. Meghan, can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Hi, Roy. Thanks for having me. Hi. My name is Meghan Christian, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. Over the past 15 years, I would say, I was working towards, as my certification success, clinical work. So that means therapy. One-on-one usually is what I was doing, but also groups. But over the last couple of years, I've moved not far away from mental health specifically, but working, I will say, with one-to-one folks. So not so much therapy day to day, but trying to work on and change issues that affect all my therapy clients. Trying to create some policy shifts because sitting in a therapy office, I kept hearing that standard set of issues. I met those folks because they self-identified as needing some ways to cope and mental health. And that's what we tell people, that's where they should turn. And there was just so many similarities, systemic challenges that folks are facing. And so my team really took a hard turn into working on systems and policy work, even though we are rooted in direct practice, and our expertise and work history comes from that direct practice world.
You're with the Institute for Child and Family Well-Being at Children's Hospital?
Yes, I am.
Oh, all right.
It's a public-private partnership between UW-Milwaukee and Children's Hospital.
And Janet, you work with the Coalition for Social Connection?
I do. I chair the Policy Champions Committee. I'm on the steering committee for the coalition, and I'm employed by what's called the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources. We're what an older Americans, an area agency on aging. Under the Older Americans Act, it defines these area agencies on aging that in most states deliver Older Americans Act programs like home delivered meals, transportation, benefits counseling, caregiver supports. In Wisconsin, we have a really strong county and tribal based system. So we are the training, technical assistance, and support around those programs for the aging units across the state, many of whom are also the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. My particular job is around the advocacy component of the Older Americans Act, which is all buy-in for people age 60 and older. And so our job at the state and federal level is to work with grassroots advocates to shape public policy that will improve the life of older adults. And in this case, we're always looking at folks who are 60 and older in our target group.
So you're looking primarily at adults 60 and older, and Meghan, you're looking at primarily kids. So we've got kind of both ends of the spectrum represented here. Let me ask you both as we start, before we kind of dig into things a little bit more. I was looking at a World Health Organization report published over the summer that declared loneliness a global public health crisis. What was your reaction seeing that as a headline?
I personally was very excited to see it. This hopefully increases the chances that globally we will address kind of what keeps loneliness and isolation in place in the structure, in how we structure our society. So what is it going to mean for Wisconsinites or for local? We have yet to see, but the fact that this is not just because Vivek Murthy, the former Surgeon General in 2013, released a report similar to WHO's report, but he's more just national. And so it was really good to hear that globally this will be an initiative that is being taken on, not just in the U.S.
Yeah. Janet, did you get that same feeling that this was actually a positive step?
Oh, yes, absolutely. For me, it was really validating. I think for a long time, we've seen the health and well-being impacts of isolation and loneliness. And so to see somebody with that kind of authority, that kind of education come out and confirm what we've felt for a long time was really affirming.
Janet and Meghan, you both work with children and with families. Kind of like I mentioned before, opposite ends of the spectrum, but you're really fighting this same root issue, which boils down to disconnection. In one sentence, what does social connection mean in your field? Janet, would you mind starting with that?
Social connection for us means being able to feel like your life has purpose and meaning, and the relationships in your life are valuable to you, they're meeting your expectations, and that you have managed to figure out how to overcome mobility issues, non-driving concerns, whatever it may be that's been placed in your way as a barrier, to still make sure you can maintain those relationships that are really important to you in your life.
Meghan, in the population that you work with, what does that social connection mean to you?
I am not great at being short, so I love the one sentence challenge. In my world, it basically means you have the number and the depth and the variety of relationships that you need and want that really buoy your life, buoy your well-being. We all exist in a labyrinth of systems and networks, and we can only be as strong as like the next person kind of next to us, and we all need that social connectedness. So really, it's about what do you need, and do you have the variety and depth that you're interested in? Because people, some people are flat out like, I'm good. I'm topped up, or by my level of interest in more. There's a reason why people don't have interest, or that there's a reason why people have the level of current connection or lack thereof. And sometimes it's like, I'm good. So there's the introverts who don't want to hear, like, just be more out there, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I would rather have depth. They're not looking for plethora. They're looking for a depth, right, in their social connectedness, perhaps.
Sure.
And so that's kind of what we're exploring, is like, how can we have meaningful policy change outside of just be nicer and talk to more people? What can we do as systems to really allow for those interpersonal interactions to happen in the first place?
So what I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily the quantity of the connections we have that makes the difference, but the quality of those connections, whether it's just one or two very close friends or a larger number of people that we're connected to.
That and you got to log the time with folks. You do have to have this large array and variety of social connection and interactions, because it takes time. You mentioned it, I think, that someone found that it takes 50 hours to become a casual friend, and upwards of 200 to become a close friend, which means you just need to be with people a lot. And some of those connections will stick and you'll want to go deeper with them. But that exposure to folks and just being around, those opportunities need to occur. And we can do stuff to make sure that systems support that those interactions can then take place.
How early in life do you see signs that disconnectedness or instability in attachments shapes resilience later in life?
The brain's interpretation of connection or lack of connection is really interpreted as a safety issue. And those signals about safety or danger are wired up really instantly in the human brain. So as fast as we become aware and able to decipher safety issues and danger, which is pretty much immediately. The midbrain is formed, at birth. That's our strongest piece. And our brain very quickly goes about finding ways to determine, are we safe or are we not? And the very first things that we do in life is to call out to someone else. We cry. And so from the very beginning, we are wired to seek connection. And the effects of having it and having our needs responded to, or not having it and having our needs go unresponded to, our body is responding to the presence or lack of connection.
Janet, in aging services, how do you see that psychological safety show up day to day? What elements shape the loneliness experience and affect that sense of psychological safety that we have?
I so appreciate what Meghan just said. I don't think about it from a psychological safety factor for many of the older adults. I feel like it's more the experience of loss. Sometimes it's loss of job. A lot of us feel a lot of sense of who we are comes from our employment. And so loss of jobs can create that need for more connection that Meghan referred to. I feel like loss of spouses, loss of significant friendships, those all have, so somebody may have created that circle of support that they relied on for safety, for happiness, for lots of things, for learning. And then gradually it starts to fall away as life changes and we make transitions, making it much harder sometimes to recreate that circle of support, particularly if we're challenged with any kind of sensory impairments, cognitive impairments, mobility issues. Those kinds of things can make it much more difficult. Not impossible, but much more difficult. So I think it's helping us to figure out, I think one of the conversations we've been having is we deliver a lot of services to people. We see the state that people are in, but we are just beginning to really talk about how to screen for loneliness, as well as how to connect people to the resources that are going to be meaningful to them. Because as we said earlier, like it's not a one size fits all. What I feel like I need to feel connected in my life might be very different from somebody else. And, it has everything to do with a person-centered approach as opposed to, oh, well, you live out in the country, or, well, you live in an apartment building. You should have lots of contacts. Right. Not the meaningful contacts that allow us to feel like we have that support and connection that we're looking for always.
Yeah. People are not data. Yeah.
No.
You work not only with policy, but with community programs. What have you learned from that policy work and the community programming work that helps successfully reduce isolation or loneliness?
Two things come to my mind. One is frequency. I think that as we've been measuring using a screening tool about whether or not some of the programs we deliver are impacting people's sense of social connection, we find that the longer groups meet together, whether it's an exercise group, a support group, a painting group, right? It's about how much time we get to spend with other people. It's not a one and done. It's a thing that builds. So after these classes or supports or services end, those relationships can continue. So it's in part about the frequency and the length of time.
The report from the World Health Organization said that loneliness can be as dangerous as smoking or obesity as far as health impact goes. Now, if we treated social connection like preventive medicine, what in your eyes would that prescription look like?
It's a great question. First of all, those statistics were shocking to us. I mean, we always knew it could have a negative impact, but it was like, wow, that makes it very real. I think the prescription obviously has to be person-centered. It's going to look different for different people, but the kinds of things we would focus on would be things like meaningful and purposeful activity. What does that look like for an individual? Does it mean volunteering? Does it mean intergenerational activities? Does it mean, what in that person's view would make them feel like what they did mattered, what they do in this world matters? And so it's a lot around identifying for somebody what that might look like and then helping achieve that. So what are their interests? What were their past relationships? And, can we start with the low-hanging fruit, which would be re-engaging with existing relationships? And what has to happen to make that happen? How do we maybe not forget, but forgive? How do we look for abilities instead of disabilities? So it's a lot about that. And then what assistance can be provided, whether it's the rides, whether it's adaptive equipment with whatever, but in identifying what are the barriers that seem to be in place for somebody, what do they identify as those barriers for them to re-engage with the community? So definitely person-centered, but those are some of the biggies. We know that loneliness is certainly multifaceted, and we also know that it's not just about the geography, the social isolation. We can be isolated in the middle of an apartment complex or the middle of a long-term care facility, surrounded by people, but none of those relationships bring joy to our lives and make us feel like we matter or feel connected. And yet we have people who live in rural communities like mine who might be very satisfied with their level of connection and don't feel lonely because they have enough outlets in their view to feel okay with that. So, it's not like we can just have this easy checklist of like, oh, so how many people are in your life? Check. Okay, you should be good there, right? Like, where do you live? Oh, check. Certainly some of those things are factors or can be factors, but the way we respond is so different. So I love the idea of a prescription. We've often talked about that in falls prevention. Like, could somebody just write a prescription to encourage somebody to engage in this activity? But it certainly isn't going to be like, I wouldn't recommend that prescription pad be pre-printed because it's certainly going to have to be personalized, right?
Meghan, resilience is a very important part of what the Institute does. How does a single, responsive, deep relationship help protect someone from long-term harm?
Okay, so I just want to put that out there. For a long time, the conversation was it's that one person. And as as science does and should do, is they've rechecked their work and they've restudied themselves and what's been found. And quite honestly, now the answer is that two, right? Now the answer is, you know what? They do really good with two, which really just illustrates the point even more robustly that a nice consistent smattering of social support is really what people need.
I love that phrase, just a smattering of social support. That's delicious.
And I think something that, and this isn't even what you asked, but it also, the pandemic taught us many a thing. One of the things was, for me specifically, was I am more of an introvert, and I learned good things about myself, and I can tolerate myself more when I'm alone too than I ever thought I would. But also, even what immediately when it happened, I remember seeing back when I was still on Facebook, the drive-by birthday party parades that started happening, and an old man being visited by his grandson or great-grandson, for that matter, through a window. The boy was on the outside. The picture was taken from inside the home, and you could see the little boy through the window. I just remember how strange that once we began, I entered into social situations where I was again standing in lines or in groups of people. I was like, wow, you know what? I used to really hate standing in a line, but even these random little, very seemingly serendipitous and very casual, banal, even social interactions, the pandemic really even just those little things, how those contribute and protect. And you never know. Just today. Okay. So, actually, Janet, yesterday in our meeting, there was somebody who popped up and said, hey, I have this resource of stories basically about how housing can change into health issues, and health issues turn into what the system then calls neglect or poverty. But really, I'm struggling here. I have these stories that I want to tell. And so now I met with her actually just before we hopped in today, and she gets linked up with our network. And now she gets to share across the state her stories and how she won't ever know all the ways in which her story has rippled out and helped people. So how can one person protect? The answer is unknowable. It's unknowable, the butterfly effect that we can all have on each other's lives if we have the time and an emotional bandwidth to invest in those small, tiny moments. And so to me, the answer is the time that you can have to invest in others. We are so frequently disconnected because we're all logging the hours for our work. And so how can someone protect? I mean, it's immeasurable, all the ways in which one person's involvement in another person's life can be protective against violence and or neglect or abuse or systems failing each other.
What you said about those serendipitous little micro connections really spoke to me, because since the pandemic also, I have noticed that I'm a little more reluctant to go through drive-throughs or automated checkout machines or things like that. I much prefer to have those little micro connections with people at the counter, because I've come to realize that being social is so very important. Janet, in your work with the aging population, where do you see these little micro connections making the biggest measurable difference?
I'm glad you asked that, because it really brings up what I wanted to mention in terms of the outcomes, right? We've been training staff and volunteers, like there's a checklist, right? You have to, thinking about serving meals, you've got to check the temperatures, you got to deliver this many meals in this much time, and you've got to make sure that you don't leave it out on the, outside, and, you go through this checklist. We are focusing much more now on the relationships that are developed between not only the participants, but between the volunteers or the staff and the people that we're serving. And so those minutes of how long do you get to spend when you're delivering a home delivered meal? Not a whole lot of time, but if you're doing it with intention and if you're doing it with the idea of engagement in mind, you hear more, you see more, you learn more, you make people feel like their presence is really important to you. And so we're just discovering that while, yes, we have routes to run and things like that, what we hear from the people is that they want the food, sure, but what they really want is that ability to engage with somebody else. Some of those folks aren't seeing another human being that day, that week, perhaps that month. And so that little relationship that happens in the exchange of foods, hey, I see your flowers are blooming. Oh, you got a new chair, whatever it might be, that pays attention to that person, listens to them when they have something to say. We talk a lot about meals in particular being a safety check. It's the opportunity we have to talk with them long enough to see, is their cognitive functioning the same as usual? Are they, is their physical environment looking safe for them? Like, is there something they need us to know? Because they might not get somebody again until the next person delivers a meal. And so just thinking about how we schedule those, how much time, and recognizing that those minutes can make a huge difference. When people talk about what they value in the program, it is their relationship with the people who deliver as much as it is the food itself. And so it's really forcing us to think broader about outcomes. And it's not just how many meals went out there, right? It's like, how are those meals helping people to stay healthy? How are they helping them to feel connected? What resources can we share? And so I'm really finding this work to be so informative to the way that we do so many other things in the network.
Meghan, does connection look different in your work with children and families versus aging populations, or are the core ingredients there the same?
Ultimately, they are the same ingredients. It is logging the time with someone who is responsive, respectful, caring. It's logging those moments. Honestly, it's same thing, services. There's this service or that service. You got this issue, we got that service. But really, when you talk to the folks, it's about the relationship that was built with whoever was the person who kind of facilitated said program. And then because that relationship was so good, or so affirming or comfortable or safe feeling, like, oh, I feel good when I'm with that person, or I feel good after I've left that person. Our body is naturally rewarded to like go do that thing. It's after oh, what do you got to say? Yeah, what kind of program are you trying to have me work here? It's like, yeah, I will, but I will because of you. I will because we are us. And now I will listen to the other things you have to say. It's like the listening. You said it, Janet, something about the list. Someone's there to listen. The listening is someone who is responsive and who is like willing to do the exchange, right? There's like a serve and return gets talked about in the way that children and babies' brains are developed in neural connections. They talk about serve and return, but really that's all of social connectedness throughout the entire lifespan is all about like, who's there to like volley with me, a banter, and who gets my vibe. Essentially, like there are people in surprising places.
So it's spending the time. It's that actual interaction with people. That's the most important thing. Meghan and Janet, where do each of you see opportunities for cross-pollination between your populations, between the aging networks and the child and family networks?
A very specific example that's a very obvious blending is the movement towards intergenerational care facilities. So a very formal looking thing. There's a building, there's brick and mortar, but just in general, any combo service. Because ultimately we come from different spheres, but yet we're all pivoted. We're all like in the direction of the same thing. That happens because of the way the grant systems work, the way the nonprofit systems, we all get put in these silos, like this is our population, but really we're working towards the same thing. So yeah, that's a very concrete one where there's all folks who need care, and it doesn't really exclude, because you're 5 years old or under, or because you are 80 years old or older, and receiving that social interaction. There's a hub of social interaction, and it doesn't really matter the age of the person, essentially. So there's places that are having day care facilities for children, and then day services. They usually refer to it for adults, co-located.
Janet, where do you see those opportunities showing up?
Often in the volunteer roles that older adults and or youth participate in. So I think, for example, of the foster grandparents going into classrooms to read with children, becoming a trusted older adult, setting an example for what being an older adult is actually like, and for the older adults to see and learn from the excitement and, when you can actually see the gears turning as children learn. Those relationships are so positive because they give each other a chance to not stereotype all kids, all older adults, right? You get to know each other individually. Older adults are often mentoring programs, whether it's high school youth, alternative high schools. I mean, we had a really strong program in the county that I worked in through our RSVP program, which is a volunteer program specifically for older adults to spend time with kids who have had a tougher time in traditional schooling and really have learned from the wisdom of older adults, the experience of older adults, but have also really shown the older adults how much these kids have to give, what they, how excited they are to be in relationships. So I see it going both ways. The scouts and the youth groups that provide services and support to older adults. Again, dispelling some of those stereotypes and myths about, what each of those age groups is like. And anytime those folks are getting together, I see the potential for those developing and blossoming relationships.
Janet, there's another example. Can I prompt her, Roy, to talk about another thing that she's involved in? You were talking, gosh, it was just yesterday morning, and that feels like a lifetime ago, but
it sure does.
You were talking about scams, and I could see scam/technology. I could see very well. I assume that there are probably youth-driven places that are also getting good at doing outreach to older adults around scams, and their fluency in the technology realm, and then they're paired with a relationship really gives with older adults. Then you were talking about scam alerts in that yesterday.
Yeah, I would say right now the relationship is more in the technology space than it is in the scams and frauds, but certainly has been very helpful to help people learn how to utilize technology, how to learn about the apps that are available, how to learn how to even access those, whether it's for digital connections, but also for protections. One of the things we shared at one of our, might have been a policy champions committee, was the technology and apps that are out there to allow people to secure their digital identities. And, it was a conversation. We were all like, what? But young people knew about those things, and they knew they had mentors who were helping guide them. And so I do believe that there's a lot of room for growth in that area, but that there's certainly the starting point for that to happen.
And what a great synergy between younger populations and older populations who maybe are hungry for some of that tech knowledge, and younger populations who maybe need to learn the patience to be able to teach someone who didn't grow up with this and realize that there actually is a generational divide that can be crossed. How fantastic. So my podcast, it appeals kind of to the broader community, but from the perspective of a first responder, in each of your institutes and coalitions, what role can municipalities or fire and EMS departments play in helping build these opportunities for connection?
Can I answer a slightly different question, Roy?
Sure, go for it.
I mean, you're giving us some latitude. I think about as EMS and first responders become familiar with how important social connection is, I think it's going to make them stronger when they respond to calls. So, for example, how important it is to make sure that if somebody's being transferred, they have their glasses, they have their hearing aids, they have their adaptive equipment, because all of those things help people feel whole and feel like they can be connected to whoever's trying to talk with them. And so I've often thought about how important it's going to be to find out from people when you can what needs to go with them. I think it's incredibly important for us to be thinking about how to make good transitions when we pull somebody out of the home, but we leave somebody there, right? So I know as the local first responders, we used to spend a little bit of time with the person left behind who is not going to the hospital, but is going to have to navigate their world without that other person. And, for older adults, that's often, they make a good team, right? And now this part's gone. And so just understanding what's going to be important to that person, what kind of resources they might need. We tend to focus as often as necessary on the patient, but there are others left behind that have needs as well. And so I think being really familiar with community resources so that you can offer something to that person that's left behind is incredibly important.
That's a great reminder. Thank you for that, Janet. Meghan, do you have anything to add? What role can fire and EMS departments play in the populations you serve?
My response to this is not just for EMS, but so kind of built off of what Janet was saying is when they show up in that first responder capacity, taking that time to that personal care to show those empathy bits, right? Like those very tangible things around making that person feel whole with their adaptive equipment. But even and especially in the presence of addiction, I'm sure that addiction, substance use is influential in a lot of the situations that first responders find themselves in, right? Mm-hmm. And because addiction is a very behaviory type of disease, like there's a lot of behavioral symptoms to it, our empathy can kind of tank because some of their behavior is distressing, right? And our bodies, our own systems respond to it. We get activated too. And so the burnout risk is high, but also just broadly, when I say approach someone with empathy, that's assuming that EMS person, that police person is resourced enough to have the empathy, to have the emotional bandwidth and the emotional labor of that section of the job that I just don't think a lot of us have enough time in our day to even respond with the appropriate amount of emotional or have enough emotional in our tank to perform the emotional labor that so much of first responders' jobs are. So the short term is hopefully can show up with empathy, but it's to actually make sure that a worker in such a job is resourced enough, including has enough social connectedness on their own and enough time in their life to have enough social connectedness. And I just don't think that the average person has with a daily grind. They have enough time to get as much as we need. We are spending less time over the course of the last 20 years. The amount of time that we've spent with friends or people that we choose to spend time with has tanked by 14, 15 hours in a month. We're getting less with people who we choose to hang out with. There's literally just not enough time in the day, I think, and something's got to give. And I perpetually come back to, time is the ultimate resource. And I think that people really need to be benefiting from the advancements in technology when it comes to what we consider a work week.
So what I'm hearing is that one of the most important things first responders can do is make sure that their battery is charged by plugging into other people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's go lightning round style real quick. I'm going to throw out a couple of questions, and Meghan, I'm going to challenge you to give short answers, which I know is not necessarily your strong suit by your own admission. but let's give it a shot. What is, and let's start with you, Meghan, what's one habit or daily ritual that fosters connection?
I'm a big fan of the random "I've been thinking of you" text message. I don't have really a reason to. I don't know why. It's been a while. Maybe it's not daily, but it's like within the week, you kind of have a few that you decide to, hey, I was thinking about you this random time, or this popped into my brain, or we haven't connected. Kind of going into what you already have, going into your contact list of who you already have, and making those relationships deeper and richer.
Janet, what's one habit or daily ritual that fosters connection?
You're out on a walk in your neighborhood. You don't leave the earbuds in the whole time. You take them out and you communicate with your neighbors as you're walking along the street, and you say, "Cute dog," and, "Oh, how's the garden doing today?" Those kinds of things, so that we don't just get so tunnel visioned when we're out and about in our communities.
Okay, so being folksy.
Yes.
Okay.
Very Midwestern, nice.
See, and focused.
Yeah.
Okay, folksy and focused. I love that. What's one barrier we can remove this year, Meghan?
Earbuds can come out.
Earbuds? Okay.
I'm going to just steal.
She stole your answer, Janet.
I mean, yeah, you can wake up tomorrow and decide that you're gonna look someone in the eyes and like acknowledge their presence in a situation that you wouldn't have. You can do that today. You can decide to say hi or make eye contact or acknowledge someone's presence when you're going to the gas station, the local Quick Trip or whatever, in a situation where you normally would not have.
Okay.
You can do that today.
Janet, anything?
We could eliminate the barrier of people not being able to get where they want to go if we did more carpooling. Like if we incentivized going together. The conversations that happen in cars, whether you're traveling for work or going to a play, are so important. They're part of that longer journey. And yet we often get in our own car or on our own bike, or, we need to be doing more together.
Okay.
And it's an easy thing
Bring
to
back
do.
the mundane. Like,
yes.
go do those crappy store runs with someone else. Like,
Yes.
remember when you hop in the car and go run your errands on a whatever, whoever else head off, do those mundane things, but with someone else.
Yeah, life used to be built on those mundane moments. Yeah.
Yep.
Tell me about a moment that reminded you why your work matters, lightning round style.
I think it's my work as in the coalition early on, when I learned that it was less about age, but disability across ages had a lot to do with how socially connected people felt or not. And it has made me really stop and think that this is obviously not just an older adult issue. It's a young children, it's a teenagers, it's a middle-aged, but there are things we can do about it. And we just have to really start concentrating on doing those things that re-engage us.
Meghan, anything?
The two most profound things that when it comes down to it, the quotes that I will share is, one, addiction is the opposite of connection. It's not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. I think that in a state that is really wears it as a pride thing, the amount of alcohol we consume in Wisconsin, and what we allow it to do for our social connectedness and our social lubricant that it provides for us. There's a level of, we don't know how to communicate, I think, without it sometimes in Wisconsin. So there's that. But also, I think that somebody said, we've independenced our way into isolation. We've gone a few steps too far in the rugged individualism aspect, down that road, maybe a bit too far, because we've gotten so good at efficiency and individualism that we just, all right, you're alone. Everybody's really alone. Have to choose a different way. We have to choose a different way.
When the World Health Organization calls loneliness a public health crisis, it can sound very overwhelming, but listening to both of you, I hear that there are a lot of reasons for hope and a lot of opportunities to turn things around. What gives each of you optimism right now?
That we're all learning to pay attention to this.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That there are so many things in that are happening around us in our environments that we feel really helpless to do anything about, but this isn't one of them. This is something that individually we can do something about, collectively we can really do something about, and we need to be doing better messaging. We hear, time is money, chop, 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 everybody run and do all your things, when in fact the reality is also true. When we don't spend time, when we don't engage, we see significant costs. They're just going to happen in healthcare and other arenas. So I really think just helping us do a mindset change.
Okay. Meghan, anything you would like to add to that?
No, it just goes back to the top. It sounds like a weird thing to be excited about, but I'm excited at the report because people who have been working in prevention services and first responder intervention services have, I think, had their finger on the pulse of the lack of social connection and like how that relates to our work for a very long time. So, like I said, it's a weird thing to be excited about, but it really just means hopefully that more people are going to direct resources towards it. Yeah.
I'm sure that there are opportunities to get involved with each of your organizations or to make use of resources. I would love to get any information on that and include it in the show notes if I could.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I'll reach out after we're offline. Janet, Meghan, I want to thank you so much for joining today after so many starts and stops. Is there anything you'd like to close with, Meghan?
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled that somebody else besides us is talking about it too. It's just fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this leads to.
Yeah, I agree. Janet, anything you'd like to close with?
Yeah, I really thank you for reaching out. I was surprised when I got your call. I was trying to make the connection, but you've done such a good job of helping connect some of those dots. Last week was Social Connection Awareness Week, so I feel like it's really nice that we don't have to have it just all in one week. We can be lifting these topics up in our own worlds all throughout the year. I would encourage people to check out connectwi.org as the coalition's website with lots of resources, lots of ideas and activities going on, trainings, education. So I hope that folks will connect and see what's out there.
And I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Janet, Meghan, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Appreciate your interest.
What I love about this conversation is how it unites every stage of life. From newborns crying out for comfort to older adults waiting for a friendly knock at the door, our biology never stops craving the same thing: connection that tells us we matter. Janet reminded us that connection isn't a one-size-fits-all prescription. It's as personal as any other treatment plan. Meghan showed us that even two closer relationships can literally rewire resilience into the brain. And both agreed that those small, everyday interactions, the quick text, the chat with a neighbor, the eye contact at the gas station, they add up. They are preventive medicine. Over these past few episodes, we've traveled from risk to recovery to redesign. Episode 1 showed us that loneliness can kill. Episode 2 with Molly Callis revealed that connection keeps us alive emotionally and professionally. And today, we learned that community is how we scale that medicine. Whether you're part of a department, a family, or a town, you have a role in building the cure. Start small. Share time. Choose interdependence over isolation because, as Meghan put it, we've independenced our way into isolation. It's time to choose differently. If this series resonated with you, share it with your crew or your community, and keep the conversation going. You can find this entire blog and podcast series at agingwellfirefighter.com, along with all my articles and episodes. If you've got feedback or a story you'd like to share, I invite you to reach out. I'll include my contact information in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on this podcast, I would love to make that happen. Stay tuned, listeners. There's more coming down the pipeline from the Aging Well Firefighter. Until then, stay safe, stay connected, and as always, fight wisely, age bravely.